Thank you, sir. I do have to make a comment that might be just a little surprising. I have to say I find one thing unfortunate about today's proceedings. And that's simply this, that not all Albertans are aware of what's happening today or are not able to tune in, because so many people are so interested in what this Premier is doing and what his department is doing. And this is just a fabulous opportunity to learn exactly who's in control, who has the leadership, and what exactly is happening. So hopefully the word does get out through Hansard and perhaps through media, but that's beyond our control. My first question, Mr. Chair, is having to do with our experiences in Washington. I was quite interested to hear the number 90% of our trade with our American friends. And I've been fortunate to go down to the States many, many times. One of the times was to visit our minister counselor. That indeed is the title, if I have it correctly. That was the first title given to a former honourable member here and minister, Murray Smith. And I was able to witness his activities one day as I tagged along and learned all sorts of invaluable lessons. And it was certainly proof to me that we really, really need that representation. Curiously enough, of course, we're the only province in the country that has representation as we do down there. First with Murray Smith and now with former Minister, the Honourable Gary Marr. My question to the Premier is, with the ever-capable Murray Smith handing the reins over to the equally capable Gary Marr, some constituents have asked this question: why is it that we would need additional advisors or consultants, be they Canadian or American? Perhaps the Premier can comment on the additional assistance that is being utilized from this point forward.
Honourable Premier.
Okay. Well, thank you. And it's a good question, and one that I know is important for Alberta, especially at a time where both the country, Canada, the United States and Mexico are entering into clean energy dialogue and some of the possible implications it may have for Alberta. Energy is a massive contributor to our economy, and we'll need to make every effort to ensure that we get the correct information to decision makers in the United States, that we're informed very well of the day-to-day developments. And it's not only in Washington, the state capital, but it's in state legislatures, working with governors. I believe, just the top of my head, there's about 6,000 pieces of legislation that are passed every year in the United States. We have of course, monitor where Congress is going on some of the issues. And the reason I say that is simply this. There was so much attention paid on by various groups as soon as the president the new president was elected, and that was that, the president will move very quickly. He's going to impose these penalties on the oil sands, and you got to move. If you don't move, you're going to get left in the dust. You'll pay a penalty. Nobody will buy your oil. And and by the way, carbon capture is a big waste. You shouldn't be doing that. All kind of advice. And most frankly, coming from some of the columnists that the previous member talked about. And quite frankly, if I listened to their advice, I wouldn't be here. So let's put it this way. The major contributor to carbon, to our carbon footprint, is electrical coal-fired generation. It's the same in many of the United States. And in fact, to reach the goals that the President has established will require a 50% reduction in energy demand. 50%. Can you imagine the cost of electricity if we reduce generation by 50% in this continent? It would further diminish our global competitiveness, would further increase the number of jobless in the North American continent, and it will also put us in a position where we would lose even more the global competitiveness in countries like India and China. Now that the President visited with our Prime Minister They have decided to enter into a dialogue and see how we can work together on the North American continent so we don't lose this advantage that we have and may lose it forever to Asia if we're not careful. How do we grow jobs, find a balance between producing energy and also the economy and the environment? With respect to the two firms that have been hired, it's $40,000 a month. The value of the firms there is to monitor policy, give this government advice on where some of the state legislatures are going with respect to policy and legislation, to work with their contacts in the Obama administration to make sure that we're not only getting the correct information from the state legislators and Congress, but we also have a better idea of which states are supporting what legislation, what states may be opposing the proposed legislation in Washington, and who do we work with to build alliances. A lot of this has to be face-to-face, and the two companies that we've hired have extensive experience. First, of course, is a former ambassador to Canada. Very good contacts with the Obama administration. Is a Democrat, so the politics align very well. And the second was a former Minister of Public Works that worked in Washington in the Canadian Embassy for many years. Again, very extensive contacts. This work that the two lobbyist organizations will do, the two firms, will complement what Gary Marr is doing in Washington. He cannot be in every state every day, nor can he monitor, as I said, a little more than 6,000 pieces of legislation that are going forward. To give you an example of what he has accomplished in a very short period of time, as you know, a lot of work was being done in anticipation of quick decision-making by the President Obama and his administration. I think now that they're in government, probably realizing that this is an overwhelming task and that it really does have to work with state governors and find the balance without really increasing the cost of energy even more and putting more pressure on the economy. But Gary has worked with in two states, one in Maryland. He worked diligently to ensure that the state of Maryland remove its anti-oil sands bill. They've done that. Testified in Minnesota on the state's low-carbon fuel standard and was able to garner support for the oil sands. He is working very closely with the state of California. And, you know, the state of California is quite ironical. Everybody talks about Alberta's heavy oil, and yet, 450,000 to 500,000 barrels a day production in California. Nobody pays attention to it. So it's just another example of how much work we have to do. But we are working through both the Washington office and the two lobbyist firms to work very closely.